Welcome back to Product Data Weekly. This is a short practical podcast where each week we break down the operational issue that slows down launches, creates manual work, or quietly limits growth inside product data in e-commerce teams. There's no theory, no hype, just what we actually see happening inside of catalogs at scale. And I'm Claire. I'm co-founder of SKU Launch and Start With Data.
Hi everyone, it's Ben here again. Nice to join you again, Claire.
Right. So today we are going to be talking around show me the money. So why should teams be investing in product data? And I guess also how we over the years have helped teams justify their spend on product data, because it's one of the more difficult projects to get signed off. So if you're looking at like whole digital transformation projects, product data is often the one that maybe it's because nobody gets really excited about it, or it's just really difficult to see that direct ROI. So do you want to maybe just put a bit more flesh on that, Ben?
I guess as you've said, they're really hard projects to get investment in. So that kind of regardless of whether it's like a data cleanup or a taxonomy project or an implementation of a system or a content enrichment project, we just see them as tricky things to get buy-in to really in a lot of organisations. There's lots of reasons that's the case, but like fundamentally what we see is a lot of the returns on these investments are very distributed in businesses. There's no like single team or single person that kind of benefits from product data initiatives, and therefore it's often quite hard to get a group buy-in. If there's one person making the case, they probably own a portion of the business case, and then there might be another person, let's say the e-commerce manager, they might see conversion rate benefit, ops manager might see efficiency benefit, but none of them can like come together and walk into the CFO's office and make the case. So it's like these investments that are very small in isolation, but when you aggregate all of them together, all the benefits across all the different operating parts of the business, all of a sudden you've got this huge aggregate ROI effectively. So I don't know if you'd agree with that, Claire, in terms of what we see in some of our customers.
Absolutely, that is what we see all the time. Is it's different parts of the team trying to come together to prove this business case, and some teams are more invested in it than others. I know one of the things that we have done a lot in the past is kind of flip that on its head, and instead of looking at that question, we look at, okay, well, what's it actually costing you? Instead of looking, look, this is what we think is going to happen. It's like, no, this is actually what is happening now. This is where we're losing money, spending money, whether it's because of returns, conversion, operational efficiency. So that's probably the biggest change that we've seen. And when you're presenting those numbers to the CFO, they kind of can't ignore those.
The cost of not doing it, isn't it? Or, what it's costing you having bad data.
Yeah. But for this session, we are going to cover five areas that we will often put into or help businesses put into their business cases to get these projects signed off. So the first area that we see is conversion rate. We've also got several examples of customers who have done this and never actually measured it properly because they didn't do it with a control to look at kind of the results before and after. So let's just break down why product data investment would affect conversion, just at a really simple level.
So obviously conversion rate's kind of a metric that everyone understands in e-commerce. It can mean different things, but fundamentally it's kind of probably one of the most direct returns. So I hope everyone knows by now that if you've got rich, accurate, complete product data on your product pages, it builds customer confidence in what they need to buy, it removes uncertainty, it makes them more informed about that product purchasing decision. So it's generally quite a good measure. In terms of measuring it, as you said, Claire, you need kind of a control group. So in terms of like a set of products, leaving like a comparable set of products unchanged. So you could pick like one category, similar price point, similar sales volume, break the products up into a control and then a test group, and basically just compare the conversion rates. I mean, it needs to be a set of products that do convert regularly. I think that's the other thing.
Yeah, don't put your bad sellers in there because
Yeah,
you're not going to see it
you're not going to
immediate.
get
Yeah,
a good
absolutely.
view.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
was just going to add as well to that. I can't remember which episode it was, but we actually spoke about doing whole category enrichment, and that's when you could really see the conversion rate changes
Yeah.
rather than just a scattergun approach for lots of different products. It's
Yeah,
really
totally.
difficult to kind of measure that. So, yeah, I'd just add that in as like another little thing. And so, a typical improvement on conversion that you might be able to attribute back to product data, what do you reckon?
I think it's probably more just giving an example of how a small movement in conversion can impact like revenue and profit. So, like, let's say if you took like £50 average order value, 50,000 product page views a month, moving from a 3% to a 3.5% conversion rate is effectively like 250 orders. You know, £12,500 additional monthly revenue, £150,000 a year, right? So there's like a direct uplift between page views to conversion to order value, and obviously then to profit, because that's the other thing a lot of people don't never think about. It's like you can sell lots of things, but how profitable are those things, and what's the direct profitability, product profitability, you know, of those products. So, you know, it just shows you like a 0.5% increase, you know, can get you quite an exponential improvement in terms of revenue and profit.
Yeah.
And then
I think we will often say, you know, if we're helping clients, kind of that 10 to 25% increase is kind of what you can see. And this is probably, I think this would actually be the fastest of all of these 5 areas. Yeah, you should be able to see kind of the uplift in weeks rather than months with this particular one.
And it's like the actual, it's like the thing that causes that uplift. I think that's probably maybe the bit we haven't touched on. It's like, you know, better content on your product pages, better filters on your listing pages, potentially better product discovery in AEO, GEO. All of those things contribute to an increase in conversion rate, right? And it's, you know, it boosts all of those things. Better search performance, internal site search, that's another one. You know, they all kind of contribute really. So I think it's a really good area to start with, right? And you could even go as far as like making small incremental improvements, you know, improve your descriptions, improve your attribution, improve your, I don't know, product titles, something like that. See what the sort of uplift you get.
Cool. So area 2, which is what you were just kind of alluding to, is the whole search visibility and organic traffic. So we know that obviously it takes a little bit longer to get ranked, for rankings to jump with that. So that's not going to happen overnight or in a couple of weeks. It does take normally around like 3 months really as like a sweet spot to see any meaningful change. Again, why it's exactly what you were saying there, that it's because the search algorithms are actually looking for that data quality. They want complete attributes, they want structured data, they want all of the keyword relevant titles. You know, they want to know that your schema kind of makes sense, categories are all aligned. So if you're giving search algorithms that you will get ranked higher, that you know, we know that. But it does take a little while for that to happen.
Yeah, and it's like you've got to put the effort in at the beginning, you know, and accept. And again, you can do this like on a control group. Like I think this is the area. Other than conversion, this is the area where there's like a clear direct impact that's very easy to measure. And the other thing that so many businesses seem to forget still is that organic traffic is free. Right, if you're paying lots of ad spend and then you have this free channel for organic traffic growing, you can get like an exponential ROI, or you could offset some of that spend against, you know, your ad spend, basically. And there is a direct correlation between the amount and quality of content and GEO, SEO, and AEO, right? It's what about what about kind of measuring it? Like,
yeah. So as you were saying before, what you're wanting to measure is your organic impressions, your click-through rates, ranking changes, and you would often, what you'd be looking for is significant ranking jumps. So that will be obvious, but again, you need to be clear
You need to have
about
the tools to measure it, right? Yeah.
exactly. Well, you need to have the tools to measure it, and you need to be looking at what you've changed in that to connect it. So, and I think that's why it's also really important to. That's why this kind of cross-functional teams all getting involved in it is really important, because you know, the person who's normally managing the product data in the business is not the same person who is looking at these ranking jumps.
Yeah.
So being able to look at that.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's so should we move on to area 3?
Yeah.
So this is good old return rates. I mean, this has been true for forever, right? Even since the initial e-commerce boom and stuff. I think this is a thing where you can see the cost of not doing something, right? Very clearly. So the fully loaded cost of return is much higher than most people realize, right? I mean, because if you think about all of the different logistical things that have to happen for that return across people and process and systems, shipping, handling, inspection, restocking, or in some cases just discard rather than restocking, you've killed a whole bunch of cost. And I think in a lot of categories, the loaded cost of return approaches or exceeds the margin of the original sale, right? So you're spending money to make zero revenue effectively.
There's also the knock-on effect of that customer. You might have just lost that customer forever as well.
Yeah.
So it's that. So it's
yeah. So how do you identify which returns are actually a product data problem?
Cool. I mean, one of the really kind of basic ways to see is by capturing the reasons for returns. So, you know, for apparel, it might be color doesn't match, or it's smaller than expected, or quality or fit not as described, you know, that type of thing. For maybe something like a more technical product, it might be not compatible with or doesn't function as described, you know, so that more technical type of thing. I know that for industrial distributors, that is a big one, is the not compatible with, because it's either not listed or it's listed wrong or things like that on websites. Yeah, so that is the easiest way to kind of identify where the product data problems are coming from. And then you're able to then look at kind of a reduction in those returns rates once that you do that product data work.
Definitely, yeah. And, you know, I don't know, it depends in terms of how you improve product data to reduce returns. I guess it very much depends on like the vertical your products are operating. Like industrial distributors, industrial components, one thing, you know, clothing, you know, apparel is always an interesting one. You know, color representation in images, dimensional data for fit, lifestyle imagery for context. You know, it does vary. Fitment and automotive is a really good example of this. It's like, you know, well, fitment is what it says, right? Can't get that wrong and stuff. And there's things like cross-referencing and supersessions and all of those sorts of things as well. Every return that says like not as described is basically data failure, isn't it? And I reckon there's a lot more of those in businesses than people realise. It's just like it comes back to that thing, doesn't it, that you said earlier about measuring it. It's like someone needs to go and collect the reason codes and the feedback, and often they're written, aren't they, on pieces of paper? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you'd like to think that people have some like shinier, more complex systems,
well, I don't,
but I think you're right.
So I just tick the box. Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah. Cool. Right. Area 4 is leading more kind of into the marketing kind of side of things, digital marketing side of things, but it is something that you definitely see. So, you know, the advertising efficiency, when you have better product data on your site, will mean that you'll get better click-through rates, your cost per click. You've also got your ROAS, which is the return on ad spend, should be much better. So this, again, I think it's just about sending people to product pages that are
Yeah.
never going to convert
Yeah.
is a crazy thing to do
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they don't have.
It
But
happens
you'd be
all
surprised
the
at how many
time.
people do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember like back in the day when I was in kind of on, running client side e-commerce. It was there were so many search marketing agencies that used to just do these really poor quality acquisition campaigns where they just basically direct to people to very generic landing pages. And a really good example of that is like where you're bidding on a specific brand or SKU, and I still see this today, like a part number, and then you're landing people on like a page without any of that information on it, or in some cases just a generic brand page. So it's like, yeah, you paid all that money, haven't you, up front to acquire the click, and then you just send them to just an empty shelf effectively. So
Yeah. So I guess that's the link there. It's kind of it's making sure that where you're paying to direct people to, that you're giving them enough information that the chances are that they will convert when they get there.
Yeah, it's like saying, like, did you ever see those golf sale signs in the street where there's like a guy
With the
and
the
they're like,
yeah.
comes to our golf sale, and then you get to the golf sale, you open the door and there's like no golf stuff, and you're like,
Yeah.
well, what is the point in paying that guy to stand there? Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right.
I think the other thing, again, if you're looking at if you're increasing your organic traffic, you then may not need to spend so much more on paid ads. Is the other thing just to think about. So I guess it's just highlighting the link between the two, because I think what happens is companies tend to never kind of think about those together. They think about it in very much in silos, and the product data should be part of the advertising strategy. Yeah.
All right.
So
should we move on to the final area?
Yes.
So
Cool.
This one is operational efficiency, the really, really exciting one. It is actually very exciting because it's very important. Yeah, it's the one that no one wants to measure.
Well, it's often the hardest one to measure, I think, is one of the things. It's very easy to pull up a report on how much you've spent on your ads per month, but it's really difficult because you don't have somebody sat there tracking how many hours they've tried to fix something, a product ad listing or to do that.
I've got a really good story about this one.
Okay.
We were working with a customer, I think it was about 5 years ago now, and we were looking at their product onboarding process, and there was one part of their product onboarding process that involved initial product creation in like their ERP and some other systems, and they shared a document that outlined their process for one product, and it was 80 slides. It was an 80-slide document of steps. It was quite incredible, really, the number of steps the data had to go through, being massaged in one system, out the other, into another, all this sort of stuff, with a lot of shadow IT. So sitting down and watching that process happen was the case of like literally a number of weeks. There were a number of weeks involved of people, and they had a team of about 60 people doing this for very high volume. So it just goes back to the point you just said, like, yes, you have to sit down and monitor it and look at it. Like, you need someone to actually sit through the process, calculate how much time it's taking to do all of these like manual steps, because the other thing is, if you go and ask the people that are doing that stuff to write it down, they often just won't tell you the real picture at all, because they don't really think about what they're doing, because it's just what they're doing.
Exactly. They're just on autopilot doing it. I think the other thing that we've come up against in businesses is that those people who do those processes think that they won't have a job at the end of it.
Yeah.
And sometimes that is the case if you're automating everything, but it's very rarely the case. It actually just leaves it open that they can actually do more. And so I think we've seen this time and time again, that it's difficult to calculate it. We see like 20-30% cost reductions when people actually sit down and look at this. I don't know what they got down, how many steps they got down to this decline that you're
Yeah,
talking
yeah, no,
about, but
that
I
customer
imagine that
went
would
from
be,
weeks to hours in terms of product
yeah.
introductions. Yeah, because they cut out about 90% of that process. So,
Yeah, which is like a huge efficiency and probably cutting out loads of manual hours and all of that. So
yeah.
I think the common things that we often will look at are the time to list, the how many hours people are spending fixing errors each month, and then
Cost
what
to
was
list as
it?
well. It's like
Cost
the
to list,
time
yeah.
to list and then actually equating that into a cost. I think, in terms of the number of person hours,
Yeah.
because I think the other thing with this one is there's always this perception that the people, like, it's cheap to do this. It's because the people that do this aren't, they're not on like whacking great salaries and stuff. They're often, or there's like temps or whatever, but it soon adds up, doesn't it? Like the cost of
Absolutely.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And I think that there's also the efficiency of not being able to. So it's obviously
yeah,
the time it takes to list, but it's also your catalog not being able to grow. So,
right.
your competitors getting those products live quicker and all of that is also a cost. So, yeah. Anything else to add on that one?
No, I think
No?
it just involves some hard graft really of
Yeah.
like just sitting down and looking at the inefficiencies and counting them.
Yeah. And then, going and maybe doing a calculation in your business, what would it look like if you had a 15% improvement in conversion rate or a 10% reduction in returns, or, if you went and had a look at that last area of where you're spending all of the hours, what does that equate to in man hours, and put a number on it? And that's then a very easy way to justify that product data investment.
Yeah, definitely. All right.
Cool. I just wanted to add, just as a one final thing though, is that if you are going to embark on any of these, it's really important that you measure the cost of the investment, that you're actually creating control groups and before you make any changes, because otherwise you're not really, it's going to be really tricky to see the return on that. And, get everybody involved in it, get all of those different teams on board and kind of advocate for why it's important for all of the teams.
Yeah.
Great.
Awesome.
So there are your 5 areas to go to your CFO and ask for some money to get your product data working harder for your business. If you want any more tips or tricks or any guidance like this, we have our weekly newsletter that comes out every Thursday, and you can find that at productdataweekly.com. And we shall see you next week for another episode.
Thanks
Have
a
a
lot,
great week.
everyone. Thanks, Clare.
Bye.
Ciao for
Bye.
now.